Buckle up. We're about to take a wild ride back to 1971. Before he was dancing on the ceiling, Lionel Richie was warming up the stage for the Jackson 5, where afros were big, bell-bottoms were in, and the Jackson 5 were kings of pop. Picture this. The year is 1971. A Jackson 5 concert packed to the rafters with screaming fans, and the Jackson 5 are lighting up the stage at Madison Square Garden. And opening for them, none other than Lionel Richie and the Commodores, ready to set the stage on fire. There's more. In the midst of this extravaganza, a young Lenny Kravitz is in the audience, wide-eyed and awestruck. Lenny Kravitz is soaking up the music, the energy, the magic. He was witnessing the concert that would shape his future. But hold on to your hats. The Queen of Soul herself, Aretha Franklin, was also in attendance. And of course, at the center of it all, it's the Jackson 5. Now you're wondering, how did all these stars align at one concert?
How, Sway?
That's the story we're about to dive into. So grab your popcorn, put on your black penny loafers and glitter socks, and let's ease on down as we unravel this fascinating tale of music, destiny, and funk. This is one story you won't want to miss. Hit that like button, subscribe to this channel for more of the Thriller Effect.
Push the red button!
This is the story of a child who transformed a family that transformed a generation, and how fame transformed Michael Jackson. This is the Thriller Effect.
I've been knowing Lionel Richie for many, many years. We go way back.
I started here in this building at Madison Square Garden. The Commodores as the opening act for the Jackson 5. How the hell do you come on knowing that Michael Jackson and his brothers are going to come out and whip your ass? Guaranteed.
The next group that I wanted to bring, the Commodores with Lionel Richie.
He used to open up for my group, Jackson 5, on our early tours as the Commodores.
Benny Ashburn was our manager.
And Berry Gordy was just moving out to Los Angeles. He invited Suzanne to head on the creative department.
Aside from Diana Ross, she was the most beautiful woman we'd ever seen. Whatever Suzanne wanted us to do, we would do.
Suzanne DePaz was a friend to our manager, Benny Ashburn.
Suzanne DePaz called up on the phone one day and said, Benny, I have a new job.
She had just started working with Motown in the A&R department.
Her first assignment was the Jackson 5.
Jackson 5, I Want You Back, ABC, all of these things.
They had just been on Ed Sullivan, and they were looking for an opening act to tour a major national tour of the States.
She said, my job is to take the Jackson 5 across America on their first U.S. tour. And I'm looking for the opening act. And Benny said, the Commodore.
And so she asked him to submit his group to an audition.
She saw us playing in New York City at a place called, oh God, what was the name of that club?
The audition took place at Lost Price Turntable, 52nd and Broadway.
Anyway, it was the place to be, right?
This lady walks in, Suzanne DePaz.
She said, okay, we're going to take these boys on the road.
We had to evolve to that stage.
We went from Alabama to Syracuse.
52 cities around the United States.
We saw the billboard live, Jackson 5, special guest, Commodores. We just freaked out. We didn't know what to do.
One thing they told us, you must be on stage every night, 8 p.m. Not 8:01, 8:02.
They said, whatever you do it in the first song, because they may not stay around for the second song.
She said, you got 40 minutes on the stage. You got to be on time, get on, and on time to get off.
My father took me to Madison Square Garden to see the Jackson 5. That was the first concert that I'd ever been to.
We have to get 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds their attention. This is the audience.
All these little kids running around.
Yeah, this was definitely event night in New York City. Berry Gordy was there with Diana Ross, Suzanne DePaz, and a couple of his kids. We'll get back to Berry Gordy later.
The garden was packed, everyone dressed to the nines. Men in leather maxi coats, women in hot pants, afros, wild hats, turbans, dashikis. As soon as we settled into our seats, which were really close to the stage, the lights dimmed, the band came on stage and started playing. The group was the Commodores.
We didn't have a hit record then.
We didn't have any hit songs.
Because we're playing top 10. We're not playing any hit records as their opening act.
We played James Brown, Cold Sweat, Sly Stone.
People started clapping and stomping their feet.
Like, wow, they really liked us.
I was not the lead singer. Clyde, the drummer, was the lead singer. He was the horn holder. Could sing, kinda.
My dad told me that was the opening.
We would do Three Dog Nights. We would do a James Taylor song, a little bit of Tobacco Road, Archibald and the Drells, Tighten Up, Glenn Campbell, Wichita Lineman, but we would put our own twist to it.
Aretha Franklin, the Queen of Soul, was entering the arena. Swathed in white mink and dripping in diamonds, I could feel a restlessness in the air.
After they started applauding,
They wanted us to hurry and get off the stage so that the Jackson 5 could
Backstage, we were joking about we sold out Madison Square Garden when you know the real truth.
And the lights dimmed again. I could make out a bunch of guys running onto the stage.
introduced the guys, they came out from behind the curtains.
For the Jackson 5 tours, our band consists of myself, Jermaine, and Ronnie Rancifer on organ, Johnny Jackson on drums.
Just Michael showing up on stage with his brothers, they'll scream for help. The J5 went out on stage and played for 45 minutes, literally 45 minutes on stage of na 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 na, baby, 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 45 minutes.
I was completely blown away by the music, the talent, the whole experience. It was surreal. I was looking directly at the Jackson 5, my real-life heroes. They were flawless.
The best band that I ever seen on stage was the Jackson 5, period. They were incredible.
And Michael's soulful, angelic voice soared.
Rolling Stone magazine captured the vibe at MSG. When Michael punctuates his rendition of Who's Loving You, you're struck with his professionalism. There's none of the embarrassment of a typical child star. The Jackson 5's clothes are the finest rich hippie outfits I've ever seen. The five brothers are beautiful, and they have complete control. What they have is the stunning assurance of young men. There was not a wasted moment.
Changed everything. The universe was a different place the next day. I wouldn't be here today if I hadn't seen the Jackson 5.
The Jackson 5 were printing money for Motown, and after scoring 4 straight #1 hits and 7 top 10 singles, Gordy made sure that the public was never starved for Jackson 5 product. By 1971, the Jackson 5 were fresh-faced superstars. For a full year, the music media was discussing every move they made. That first few years of touring was relentless. Motown pumped out 5 albums in 15 months to capitalize on this explosive success.
But we have a tutor when we go on the road.
Because of the laws, you have to have teachers. It complicates your business so much.
Travel with a tutor, and you have to do your schoolwork, of course.
A tutor on the road is really fun. She made sure we got our work done.
She do our schooling most of the time when we're on the road.
Your father and mother go with it?
Just my father.
I remember my brothers always being on the road. I was at home with my mother and my sisters. I remember getting up every Saturday morning with my pajamas on and waiting for their Saturday morning cartoon to come on and getting really excited.
I missed them a lot. Sometimes they were gone for 2 or 3 weeks.
While they were traveling, sometimes they'd come home and stay a day and have to go back on the road again.
The tour picked up again in Philly.
Actually, they were all very mischievous. They just loved to play.
Typical day on the road for the Jackson 5 was coming into a hotel, making sure our rooms are connected so we can have all our pillow fights and run from room to room.
If you leave your shoes outside, you wake up the next morning, they put ice cubes. By morning, it's melted. Are we babysitting?
We loved hanging out with the Commodores.
Once we started traveling with the Jackson 5, it took us straight across the USA.
It gave us incredible exposure. Before we started recording, we started writing.
In every city on the tour, they brought out the keyboards and jammed. Lionel and Walter were always writing songs.
Slowly, one song at a time, I started singing the songs I wrote.
We watched them working. We saw how they built a song. Michael already had ideas of his own. There's so many songs in my head, he would say after a jam session. Unfortunately, we were a group that had our songs written for us.
Because that was a learning experience for us that time. But I wish we had a chance to express ourselves back then.
Barry always tried to discourage me of being an artist. They didn't have a very healthy outlook on artists. They figured anybody can be a singer. Why do you want to go out there and do all that nonsense for? Be a writer and a producer and make lots of money, and different artists would do different tracks. It was the producers and the song.
Well, the early days of Motown are kind of like classical days. We were so young at the time. We always wanted to write our own material.
Well, we didn't make those type of decisions. Motown picked the songs that we recorded.
Coming up from Motown, we always had everybody do stuff for us. And I always relied on people to do stuff for me, as if to make the decision. You're going to wear this, you're going to do these songs, you're going to do this interview, you're going to do that TV show. I've been mentally scarred by that. It was easier, but it wasn't always right.
When they were with me, I was very strict on certain things, but totally free on other things. I was freedom within restrictions.
From the television appearances to sold-out arenas, the Jackson 5 were either on stage performing for thousands of screaming fans or in the studio recording tracks.
We're little kids just playing on the mic, not serious, and Hal Davis, he'd push record, waiting to hear. We just start laughing and, come on guys, come on.
Work, lots of rehearsal, from one concert to the next. It wasn't concert, it was TV shows or interviews or picture sessions.
With that, that's the only life you know. You gotta be ready for change. I was ready. Then it started to realize that this is a job.
It was crazy those days.
If we didn't have a concert, go straight to the studio and background and leave vocals. And if we had any cleanup, we would do it on the weekends. Certain parts were taken one by one. Some parts were taken as a group in the control room. Sit with the producer and he'll go through it. This is your line, Jermaine.
What Berry Gordy was doing with Joe Bett, creative guys could go in and work. Producing these name acts, they would overcut maybe 20, 30 songs for one album.
And they cut the tracks and have us to come in later and do the vocal. We learned it on the spot in the studio.
Then he would have the artists come in and just sing on top of the tracks.
They would send a copy of the track we had did that day to him. He would study it and give them notes.
Artists were encouraged to record more songs than needed. The surplus was stored in the vault.
Have you made some secret backlog records that you can issue during the time that your voice is changing?
No.
Yeah, the interviewer gets it right. There was a secret backlog of recordings, but they weren't made because Michael's voice was changing. They were made for other purposes. Motown was stockpiling Jackson 5 songs. Let's dig deeper into why this was problematic. There were hundreds of tracks that were never released while the Jackson 5 were still at Motown. The tracks were vaulted in the short term, but there have been numerous compilations released, all paid for by the Jackson 5, solely for the benefit of Motown. Obviously, artists felt exploited. Joseph signing the brothers to Motown was initially cause for celebration, but the need for a closer look at the contract terms is obvious. Motown had seen their artists leave after their contracts were up. The rationale behind stockpiling was simple: to have songs ready for release after the artist left.
So they would overcut maybe 20, 30 songs for one album.
During the Jackson 5's 6 years at Motown, they recorded 469 songs. Only 174 of those songs were released. And when they eventually signed with Epic, they were presented with a bill for the entire 469 songs.
And everything they did, Berry got the publishing rights. All of those costs went to the artist.
Well, by the time we got to Los Angeles, California, there on the front row was Berry Gordy, who saw the group.
Berry Gordy says, hey, are these guys signed?
And decided to sign us to Motown.
He just said, sign them.
And they paid them a check for $108,000. That's legal money with the J5's name written on the bottom of those six figures.
I wear glasses. I looked at it. I thought it was $1,500. I look at the check again. It was $15,000. My hand was shaking.
When Joseph was presented with that initial contract, he signed it. It probably should have never been presented to him. Richard Aarons, the attorney he had chosen to partner with to manage the boys, it's not clear that he even had the experience to get the Jacksons favorable terms.
Michael needed manager, somebody to worry about him, not look to him as a meal ticket.
Joseph was not equipped to deal with how Berry Gordy did business.
We have gotten this contract with Motown. However, for 2 years, we refused to activate our contract.
We did 2.5 years touring with the Jackson 5 before we ever got in a studio.
Most artists, you get a contract, you can't wait to go in the studio and record. We did our homework. We did some due diligence.
And a producer can run the costs out.
Because every time you cut a song, those are dollars on the book. The record company is going to get it out of you one way or the other. It's got to be paid back.
I'm a businessman at heart. I love to sit down with the books, and I love to negotiate.
I was an economics major, accounting minor, and it didn't take me long to figure out,
Joe Jackson wasn't equipped to negotiate at Berry Gordy's level, but somehow the Commodores were.
Berry Gordy had songwriters and producers and musicians that would go in and write the songs, produce the tracks. Then he would have the artists come in and just sing on top of the tracks. It was a similar line.
Berry would let the producers work with us.
But at Motown, they had an album when they needed 6, 7 tunes. There would be 6 producers all gunning at the different Motown studios trying to get that single.
There was so much competition with great people. So I just really spent a couple years just learning my craft. It was very hard for me to get into the studio.
Rick was part of the machine.
We respected the machine very assembly. We would come out, they would introduce us to producers and tracks, and we didn't want to use these tracks. And Berry Gordy was like shocked. We knew we were spending our money because it had to be recouped, and we weren't ready to spend money on tracks that we just weren't feeling. We would listen to them. It's good, but it's not us.
Motown was fielding requests from overseas promoters in France, Japan, Ghana, Germany, and the UK as their fan base spread to Europe, Africa, Australia. The world had never witnessed anything like the Jackson 5.
And they had to go through this whole cycle of success, being famous, went into that front door and came out another door, a star.
And they had everything that was necessary for the global success they achieved. The hits, a group of dedicated songwriters.
Hal Davis and the Corporation, Deke Richards, Fonz Mizell, and Freddie Parent, all those guys. They were young men. They were great writers.
Every writer and producer in the company signed a contract with Joe Band, which was owned by one person, Berry Gordy. They all went to Joe Band.
Every song that came out of Motown Records, every song by Supremes, Marvin Gaye, Jackson 5, Stevie Wonder, Diana Ross, Rick James, DeBarge, is owned and distributed and administered by Jobet Publishing.
Artists who wrote, like Stevie, Smokey, and Marvin, they made money.
On his 21st birthday, and coming back to California, there was a wire from Stevie's attorney disaffirming every contract that he had with Motown.
We still have an understanding. We're still close. It's just that basically now, and I feel that the only way that I can do what I want to do totally and is to be free enough to do them.
I felt like I was being puppeteered. My brother was in the war. But I wanted to write an album and do music that would really make people say, wow, he's after us. So I wrote and I produced.
Fame killed Gordy's relationship with his greatest songwriters. The corporation got its name because Gordy needed the group that would be writing for the Jackson 5 to be anonymous. And this group delivered 4 number ones, and now they wanted compensation and recognition. Holland Dozier Holland were citing the same issues that Mizell, Perrin, and Mizell were raising now. This is exactly what Gordy wanted to avoid. Back in episode 5, Holland Dozier Holland, they quit. But this time Gordy's problem is a Jackson 5 problem. The corporation created the Jackson 5's signature sound that the world was falling in love with.
I really wanted to hold on to our publishing. But Berry was making money. It was a trying experience. Had to use a lot of diplomacy.
Now, we did that until 71. And then I just stopped writing for Motown.
They couldn't see the vision we had. That we moved forward to start our own production company, Sky High Productions.
Troubles were building with the Jackson 5 and Motown.
I tried to hide it as much as I possibly could. At that time, how I felt was my own feelings. I didn't let it come out, But naturally, you get to a point where you can't help yourself, and then you have to deal with it as it comes.
Motown wants more income streams from Jackson Mania, and that means solo projects. Yes, solo projects. Jermaine, Michael, Jackie. They're stepping out of the shadow of the Jackson 5 and into their own musical identities. In the next episode, we're turning the spotlight to 1972, the City of Angels, and the Jackson brothers are about to embark on their solo projects. They've barely had the chance to experience their new reality at home, and LA life brought a whole new level of fame and attention for the Jackson 5, from the recording studio to the red carpet. We're diving into how they navigated this new world and the impact it had on their personal lives and their careers. It's a tale of ambition, fame, and the relentless pursuit of success. So what do you guys think? Is Motown overworking the Jackson 5? Were they pushing them too hard? Or was this just part of the process that made them legends in the first place? And what about market saturation? Was Motown flooding the market with merchandise and music? I'd love to hear your thoughts, so drop a comment below. Let's get a conversation going. And don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. Yeah, we've reached the end of the episode, but this thing has barely gotten started. Hit the like button. And if this is your corner of the sky, I want you back for episode 10.